There is a certain kind of woman who walks alone, not because she is lost, but because she has learned the road under her feet is her own. She moves quietly, but every step she takes shakes the dust from centuries of silence. When she sits in solitude, the world begins to tremble, for she has found something no one can take from her, herself. A woman who spends time alone is not lonely, she is listening. She is hearing the language of her own spirit whispering truths that no one else was brave enough to tell her. She is unlearning the noise that told her she was not enough, not beautiful enough, not strong enough, not worthy of her own time. In her stillness, she learns to speak in the voice of her ancestors, those women who were silenced, those who dreamed but could not rest. She rests for them now, and in that rest she gathers her power. There is danger in that kind of peace. The kind of danger that unsettles those who have built their worth on her weakness. They called her fragile because they feared her strength. They called her emotional because they feared her depth. They told her that her solitude was sadness because they feared her silence. For in her silence, she remembers who she is. And when a woman remembers who she is, no one on earth or under it can make her forget again. She learns to love her own company. She learns the art of conversation with her soul. The questions that used to keep her awake at night now lie gently beside her, like old friends who no longer demand answers. She has become a home to herself, no longer knocking on doors that do not open, no longer begging to be seen in eyes that cannot truly see. She builds her own windows now and lets in her own light. People will not understand her. They will whisper, they will wonder, they will say she has changed. And they will be right. She has changed. She has stopped trying to be small in rooms that could not contain her fire. She has stopped giving explanations to hearts that only came to take, not to understand. She has stopped searching for mirrors in the faces of others and found reflection in the depth of her own being. A woman who spends time alone begins to know herself as something sacred. She learns that her worth was never measured by who stood beside her. It was carved within her long before she was born. The same hands that molded the mountains, that stretched the sky, that poured the rivers, those hands shaped her too. So she sits not in loneliness, but in communion with creation itself. There is a power in her quiet. It is not loud, not boastful, but it moves like thunder inside the bones. She has learned that storms do not always arrive with rain. Sometimes they live in the breath of a calm woman who refuses to be broken again. She does not raise her voice, she raises her spirit. She does not fight for attention, she fights for her peace. And when she finds it, she guards it like a sacred flame. A dangerous woman is not the one who shouts. It is the one who no longer needs to. She has seen the world try to cage her, and she has learned that the key was always in her own hand. She does not run from the darkness within her. She walks through it, barefoot, unafraid, lighting her own way with courage and grace. There was a time when she believed she had to be needed to be loved. She poured herself out until she was hollow, until there was nothing left but echoes of other people's desires. But solitude taught her a different lesson, that she could be whole without being wanted, that her value did not decrease because someone else could not see it. Now she fills her own cup, and those who come near her drink from her overflow, not her sacrifice. She spends her evenings in her own company, not out of isolation, but because she enjoys the sound of her own laughter, the rhythm of her own breath, the softness of her thoughts unfolding like petals. She lights a candle, she reads words that speak to her soul, she listens to music that stirs something ancient within her. In her aloneness, she is abundant. In her solitude, she is sovereign. And people will say, she's become too proud, too independent, too much. But she smiles, for she knows those words are often spoken by those who fear what they cannot control. A woman who does not beg for love, who does not chase approval, who does not apologize for existing, she is the mirror that forces others to face their own emptiness. The world is uncomfortable with women who belong to themselves. It has built entire stories to warn them against solitude. Fairy tales that tell them the forest is dangerous, that being alone will destroy them. But the truth is, the forest is where she finds her strength. The quiet is where she meets her truth. And when she walks out of that silence, she walks like someone who knows the power of her own heart. A woman who spends time alone learns patience. She learns that everything blooms in its season, and she too is a season unto herself. She no longer rushes to fit into the timelines of others. She no longer waits for permission to begin. She begins. She forgives, she lets go. She becomes her own rhythm, her own sunrise, her own revolution. Those who once pitied her will one day seek her counsel. They will come to her when their own noise becomes unbearable, when the world's demands have emptied their souls. And she will welcome them with kindness, for solitude has made her generous. She will not boast about her peace. She will share it like water from a deep well. But make no mistake, she will not allow anyone to poison it again. She has boundaries now. She has learned that saying no is not unkind, it is sacred. She guards her energy the way the sun guards its light. Not everyone can handle the heat of a woman who knows herself. Some will call it arrogance, others will call it mystery. But she knows it is truth. In her alone time she has met all her faces. The girl who once cried for love, the woman who stood alone in the dark, the survivor who rose from ashes, the queen who now sits in her power. She has forgiven them all. She carries them with her not as wounds, but as wisdom. Every scar has become scripture, every tear a prayer. She no longer hides her past, she honors it. And there is danger in that kind of healing. For a woman who has healed no longer dances for crumbs of affection. She no longer mistakes pain for passion. She no longer tolerates what she once accepted. She has learned that peace is not found in another person's arms. It is built in her own. There will be days when the world tries to pull her back, when loneliness whispers in disguise. But she knows the difference now between being alone and being abandoned. She knows that solitude is not a punishment, it is preparation. It is the space where she becomes the woman she was always meant to be. When she walks into a room now, she carries silence like a crown. People feel her before she speaks. They sense something unshakable, something untamed. That is the energy of a woman who has met herself and lived to tell the story. She does not seek validation, because her worth is no longer a question. It is a fact. A woman who spends time alone learns the sacred art of enough. Enough love within herself to sustain her. Enough peace to silence her fears. Enough courage to begin again, even after everything. She has stopped trying to be perfect and started being present. She has stopped chasing and started becoming. When she loves now, she loves from fullness, not from hunger. She gives not because she is desperate to be chosen, but because her heart is abundant and she delights in the giving. And if love leaves her, she will not break. She will bow her head, bless the memory, and keep walking. For she has learned that no loss can take away what she has built within. Her solitude has made her radiant. There is a glow in her that does not come from attention, but from alignment. She has become light itself, and those who touch her either grow or go. She does not chase either outcome. She trusts the flow of her life, the same way the moon trusts the pull of the tide. There's nothing more powerful than a woman who has mastered her own company. She does not need noise to feel alive. She does not need approval to feel beautiful. She has learned that peace is a form of beauty too, quiet, deep, and steady. She walks through chaos untouched because her calm comes from within. The world has always feared women who know themselves, because such women cannot be bought, controlled, or silenced. They write their own stories. They define their own worth. They build their own altars. And when they pray, they do not beg, they declare. A woman who spends time alone is not dangerous because she seeks harm, but because she is free. Free from needing to prove, to perform, to please. Free from the weight of expectations. Free from the illusion that love must come from outside her. She has found it within, and that love is unshakable. When she looks in the mirror now, she sees not flaws, but evidence of living, of surviving, of growing. Every line is a poem, every curve a story. She no longer edits herself for comfort. She no longer lowers her voice for acceptance. She has become the full volume of her own being. There is grace in her stillness. There is rebellion in her rest. There is revolution in her joy. She has learned that laughter is resistance, that softness is power, that choosing herself is not selfish. It is sacred. When the world grows loud again, when everyone rushes and pretends, she returns to her solitude like a sanctuary. There she lays down her burdens, washes her soul in silence, and remembers she is whole. She is worthy, she is enough. The danger of such a woman is not in what she might do to the world. It is in what she might awaken within it. For when one woman learns to stand alone, she becomes a mirror for others. She teaches by being. Her strength whispers permission to those who have forgotten their own. And slowly, quietly, the world begins to shift. So let her walk alone. Let her sit in silence. Let her build her peace brick by brick. Do not pity her solitude, honor it. For in that stillness, she is rewriting the meaning of power. She is teaching that love begins at home, within the soul. She is proving that a woman who knows herself cannot be defeated. She does not seek to be feared, but she will be respected. She does not demand attention, but she will command it. For a woman who has faced herself in the mirror of solitude has already faced the world, and won. And when she rises each morning, she does not ask what the world expects of her. She asks only, how can I honor the woman I have become? And the answer comes softly by being, by existing fully, by standing tall in her truth. A woman who spends time alone is dangerous because she is no longer fooled by empty promises. She sees beyond the masks, beyond the noise, beyond the illusion. She knows the difference between love and dependency, between peace and distraction, between attention and respect. She has become both the question and the answer. She is the prayer and the fulfillment. She is the beginning and the continuation. And when history writes her name, it will not call her lonely. It will call her luminous. It will call her wise. It will call her the woman who dared to meet herself. And in doing so, changed everything. Solitude teaches a woman to love herself without permission. When the world has taught her that her worth depends on someone else's approval, her time alone becomes an act of quiet defiance. In the stillness, she begins to hear her own heartbeat again. That ancient rhythm that once whispered she was enough long before anyone told her otherwise. She learns to see herself, not through the eyes of expectation, but through the eyes of truth. She watches the sunlight fall across her skin and realizes she does not need anyone to tell her she is radiant. She sits with her flaws and finds that they too are part of her beauty. She begins to understand that love does not arrive only through others. It begins as a seed within her own soul, waiting to be watered by her acceptance, her forgiveness, her grace. There was a time when she sought validation like air, when she bent and folded herself into shapes that pleased others but suffocated her spirit. Alone, she starts to unfold again. Each breath a small rebellion, each moment of self-recognition a victory. She listens to her thoughts, not to judge them but to understand them. She watches the way her emotions rise and fall, and she learns that none of them make her weak. They make her alive. She begins to talk to herself kindly. Not with the sharp words of comparison or guilt, but with the tenderness she once reserved for others. She becomes her own caretaker, her own companion, her own comfort. The world around her may not understand this transformation. They may call it selfishness, but it is survival. They may call it isolation, but it is intimacy. With her spirit, her dreams, her truth. In that solitude she discovers that love is not a currency to be earned, it is a birthright. She realizes that no one can give her what she has always carried within. The compliments she once craved now sound like echoes compared to the steady voice rising from her own heart. That voice tells her she is worthy not because she is perfect, but because she exists. When she spends time alone, she learns the rhythm of her own life. She no longer rushes to meet others' timelines or to keep pace with expectations. She walks at her own speed, guided by intuition, by peace. She delights in her own laughter, in the small joys that once went unnoticed. She dances to music only she can hear, moves in a way that feels like prayer. Every quiet morning becomes a lesson in presence. Every night spent alone becomes a reunion with her soul. She no longer needs the mirror of others to reflect her light. She has become her own reflection. In that sacred stillness, she falls in love with herself. The woman she was, the woman she is, the woman she is becoming. She learns that love was never something to be found. It was something to be remembered. She no longer waits for permission to feel whole. to feel enough, to feel loved. A woman who knows her silence carries more power than her words. She understands that strength is not always found in the sound of a raised voice, but in the calm that follows restraint. In a world that demands constant explanation, she chooses to let her silence speak for her. Her quiet is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the pause before thunder, the stillness before a wave rises to meet the shore. When she holds her silence, it is not because she lacks something to say. It is because she has already said enough, lived enough, felt enough to know that truth does not always need to be spoken to be known. Her silence confuses those who rely on noise to feel powerful. They mistake it for weakness, but she knows better. She has learned that those who shout the loudest are often the most afraid. She no longer feels the need to explain her worth, to justify her choices, or to defend her peace. Her silence has become her shield and her language, a quiet declaration that she no longer owes anyone access to her spirit. In moments when others expect her to react, she simply breathes, and that breath becomes a boundary. She has discovered that she can protect her energy, not by fighting but by refusing to be drawn into chaos. There is a wisdom that lives inside her silence. It carries the echoes of everything she has endured. The heartbreaks, the betrayals, the disappointments that once made her question her own voice. Now those same experiences have taught her discernment. She knows when to speak and when to listen, when to step forward and when to stand still. Her silence is not absence, it is mastery. It is the moment when she gathers herself, when she decides that her peace is more valuable than being understood. In her quiet, she becomes observant. She sees what others miss, the way people hide behind words, the way truth trembles between sentences. She learns that power is not about dominating conversations, but about choosing when to be still. She feels no urgency to prove herself, because she knows that her actions, her grace, her steadiness already tell her story. When she walks away without explanation, the silence she leaves behind speaks volumes. It says she will not be diminished. It says she will not be pulled into battles that do not deserve her strength. Her silence is both prayer and protest. It is where she meets her intuition, where she hears the voice of her higher self guiding her toward peace. In a world that glorifies noise, she becomes the reminder that quiet can be revolutionary. Every time she holds her tongue instead of responding in anger, every time she chooses stillness over struggle, she reclaims her power. Her silence is not submission, it is control. It is her way of saying she has nothing to prove, no one to convince, nothing to hide. It is the sound of a woman who has found power within herself. The world fears a woman who cannot be controlled by its noise. She becomes an enigma, a mystery that unsettles those who depend on her compliance to feel secure. From a young age, she was taught to listen to the world's instructions. How to dress, how to speak, how to please, how to shrink. But one day she stops obeying the rhythm that was never her own. She steps out of the noise and learns the melody of her spirit. The world calls it rebellion, but it is simply awakening. Her silence becomes louder than their commands, and her peace becomes louder than their opinions. The same voices that once dictated her path now echo in the distance, unable to reach her anymore. They fear her because she no longer dances to the tune of approval. She has realized that the applause of others is a fragile currency, one that can vanish the moment she stops performing. So she walks away from the stage built by expectation and builds her own altar of authenticity. There, she worships truth. There, she honors freedom. She no longer explains her choices to those who measure her through their own insecurities. The world, used to taming women with judgment and doubt, finds no weapon sharp enough to wound her now. She is too aware, too grounded, too whole to be shaken by the noise outside her soul. When she stopped listening to the noise, she began hearing herself. She started to recognize which thoughts were hers and which were planted by others. She unlearned the guilt that kept her apologizing for existing. She unlearned the need to please. She unlearned the illusion that love must be earned through suffering. In their place, she planted clarity, boundaries, and peace. The more she grew in that quiet garden within herself, the more dangerous she became to the systems that thrived on her doubt. They will call her cold because she no longer chases. They will call her arrogant because she no longer bows. They will call her distant because her attention now belongs to her dreams. But she knows what they truly mean. They can no longer use her. Her energy is no longer available to feed their insecurities. Her time no longer spent soothing the discomfort of others who refuse to grow. She is not cruel, she is free. And freedom has always frightened those who have never tasted it. A woman who cannot be controlled by the world's noise becomes a mirror that reflects the truth others avoid. Her calm exposes chaos. Her confidence reveals weakness. Her independence challenges tradition. She does not have to speak against the world to change it. Her existence does that for her. The world fears her because she stands as proof that a woman can belong fully to herself, that she can choose her own rhythm, her own voice, her own way, and that she can do so without apology. Time spent alone transforms wounds into wisdom. When a woman sits in her solitude long enough, she begins to see that every scar carries a lesson, every heartbreak holds a mirror, and every silence is a teacher. At first the quiet feels heavy, like the weight of everything she tried to forget pressing against her chest. The memories come in waves, the betrayals, the disappointments, the moments she gave too much of herself and received too little in return. But she does not run from them anymore. She sits with them. She breathes through them. And in that brave stillness, she begins to understand that pain was never meant to break her. It was meant to awaken her. In her solitude, she revisits old wounds not to reopen them but to release them. She begins to see her past through softer eyes. She realizes that the people who hurt her were also hurting, that the lessons she learned in heartbreak were the same ones that taught her to love herself more deeply. She sees how every ending carved space for her beginning, how every goodbye pushed her closer to herself. The same loneliness that once felt unbearable now feels sacred, because it holds the power of transformation. She is no longer defined by what she lost, but by what she found in the aftermath: resilience, self-respect, and a voice that no longer trembles when she speaks. As she sits in the quiet, the noise of the world fades and her inner world becomes clear. The ache in her heart turns into understanding. She sees patterns she once repeated without knowing why. She recognizes how she gave love without boundaries, forgiveness without discernment, trust without proof. Now she learns to give differently, not from desperation but from wholeness. Her wounds become wisdom written on the pages of her soul, guiding her choices, shaping her compassion, strengthening her intuition. Every tear that once felt wasted now has meaning. It washed away illusions, it softened her edges, it prepared her for the strength she carries now. She no longer resents her pain, she thanks it. Because through it, she learned the kind of peace that only those who have suffered can truly understand. In her solitude, she realizes that healing is not about erasing the past but integrating it, taking the broken pieces and arranging them into a mosaic of strength and grace. Time alone has turned her pain into poetry. She speaks differently now, moves differently, loves differently. There is depth in her eyes, softness in her tone, and certainty in her steps. The woman who once bled for others now bleeds light. The lessons carved into her soul have become her armor and her gift. Her solitude did not destroy her, it refined her. What was once her wound has become her wisdom, and what once felt like the end has become the quiet beginning of her power. When a woman stops chasing love, she becomes love itself. There is a sacred shift that happens when she realizes she no longer has to run after affection, no longer has to prove her worth to be chosen. For so long, she gave her heart away like a gift to those who did not know how to hold it. She believed that love was something to be earned, something to be won, something that arrived when she became enough for someone else. But in the quiet of her solitude, she discovers that love was never outside her reach. It has always lived within her. She begins to treat herself with the same tenderness she once gave away so freely, and in doing so, she finds a love deeper than any she has ever known. She learns that love is not a chase, it is a becoming. It is the way she speaks to herself when no one is listening. It is the way she chooses peace over chaos, authenticity over approval, truth over illusion. She no longer needs to chase what flows naturally when she is aligned with herself. Her heart no longer aches from overgiving, because now it is full, full of understanding, full of acceptance, full of the quiet joy that comes from knowing she is already whole. The emptiness she once tried to fill with others is now a sacred space she fills with her own light. When she stops chasing love, she begins to attract it, not because she is trying but because she has become it. Her energy changes, her presence softens. She no longer vibrates with need, she radiates with confidence. The love that once ran from her now finds her effortlessly, drawn not to her desperation but to her peace. She learns that true love does not arrive through pursuit, but through alignment. It comes when she is no longer looking for it to complete her, but to complement her. It finds her when she is too busy loving her own life to beg for belonging. She begins to see that love is not only found in romance. It is in the morning light that warms her face, in the laughter that bubbles up unexpectedly, in the way her heart swells at her own growth. She feels it in her own breath, in the rhythm of her steps, in the stillness of her nights. She realizes she no longer needs someone else to tell her she is loved when she feels it in the way she exists. She becomes love in motion, love in form, love unbound. Now, when love enters her life, it does not consume her, it adds to her. She no longer trades her peace for passion or her worth for attention. She loves freely without fear, because she knows love is not something to chase. It is something to embody. She becomes the love she once searched for, and the world around her begins to mirror it back. Her peace is her rebellion, and her solitude is her crown. In a world that glorifies noise and confusion, she dares to choose calm. She no longer rushes to prove her value through exhaustion or validation. She simply exists in her quiet strength. Her peace unsettles those who thrive on chaos, because it cannot be manipulated. It is the kind of peace that was earned through storms, through heartbreak, through the long nights she spent rebuilding herself piece by piece. Her calm is not a lack of fire. It is fire mastered. It is the still flame that refuses to flicker no matter how strong the wind blows. She wears her solitude like royalty. It is not a cage but a throne. From it she rules her own emotions, her own time, her own boundaries. Her solitude is not emptiness, it is clarity. It is where she meets herself fully and learns what truly nourishes her soul. She has stopped seeking company just to avoid silence, because now silence speaks to her like an old friend. It tells her truth she could not hear when the world was too loud. In that sacred space, she learns that her joy does not depend on others, and her peace is not up for negotiation. People will look at her and wonder how she does it, how she remains so composed while everything around her demands reaction. But she knows that peace is not passivity, it is power. It is the quiet decision not to be controlled by chaos. It is the discipline of choosing softness when anger would be easier, the strength to step away instead of fight battles that drain her light. Every time she walks away from conflict, she grows stronger. Every time she chooses silence over explanation, she becomes freer. Her peace becomes her protest against everything that once demanded her suffering. There was a time when she thought strength looked like endurance, carrying pain until it broke her. Now she knows strength is release, putting down what was never hers to hold. Her peace is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is knowing that she does not have to respond to every challenge, attend every argument, or fix every broken thing. She trusts the timing of her life and the power of letting go. The woman who once fought to be understood now rests in understanding herself. Her solitude is her crown because it reminds her she is sovereign. She belongs to no one but herself. She has learned that peace is the highest form of power, and she wears it with quiet dignity. The same energy that once fueled her battles now fuels her healing. She no longer needs chaos to feel alive. She is alive in her stillness. The world may not understand her calm, but she no longer seeks to be understood. She knows her peace is her freedom, and her solitude is the throne on which she reigns.